everybody. We are live and starting, today is Thursday, August 20th. It's 2 p.m. Central Time in Austin, Texas. So we are live and we've got about 63 people in the room right now. So go ahead and just introduce yourself and tell us where you're calling from or where you're chiming in from. We also have a special offer for you today. We're going to be giving away a free 30-minute coaching call to everybody who downloads their fact finder sheet. You'll see that on the right in the chat function, in the chat box, in the pop-ins, the offers. That free 30-minute coaching call is only good for those who are attending live, and it's only good as long as the webinar is on. As soon as we finish this webinar, it's not going to be a free 30-minute call anymore. These coaching calls typically cost anywhere from $2,500 to $5,000, depending on how much time and energy and effort we have to spend going through your personal economy and plugging the holes and fixing the problems that we see, coming up with a game plan or a solution. So it's extremely valuable information, and it's ongoing coaching. And we do have a coaching platform that I would recommend that everybody check out. It's at strategic-wealth.net. We're called the Strategic Wealth Network, so I thought that was the most appropriate URL. It's strategic-wealth.net. So you can go there and check it out. You can join us as a tribe. We have about 16,000 tribe members right now who are participating in various levels, various degrees. Some are just checking out the blog information. Some are actively engaged in the ongoing coaching calls and the ongoing coaching offers. And then others are just, they just want to learn. So they're watching the videos, they're learning at their own pace, and they're excited to be learning new stuff. And that's what we're all about is education. So we believe that people are tired of being sold to, and they can smell a salesman a mile away. We don't sell anything. Our number one rule at our firm is no selling. We just simply educate you and give you the information that you need to make the best possible decision for you and your family in your own personal economy. Okay? So with that in mind, what I thought I'd start with is an article that I saw recently. It was kind of interesting to me. Let me share my screen real quickly and show you the article. This comes from Zero Hedge. Zero Hedge is one of my favorite blogs out there because they really are tied into the psychology of the markets. And I believe firmly that right now, the numbers speak for themselves. We are currently over 18, close to $19 trillion in national debt, in sovereign debt, which is government debt. That's not good. If you include credit card debt, car loan debt, student loan debt, home loan debt, any other kind of debt, lines of credit, all of those debt instruments or derivatives is what they really are. They're just simply derivatives. They're paper products. You're talking $64 trillion worth of debt that we have here in America, which is insane. I don't know how it got to that point or how we got to the area of $64 trillion in debt. But, to be honest with you, globally, if you're talking about around the world, we're over $900 trillion in debt or in paper derivatives, okay? So there are $900 trillion in paper that's being traded and sold and bought by people around the world. And if you were to combine all of the assets that are available on planet Earth, meaning all the gas, all the oil, all the land, all the cattle, all the fruits and vegetables, all the food, everything you could think of, and you were able to sell planet Earth, it would be equal to about $65 trillion. So we have $900 trillion in assets or debts outstanding against or backed up by only $65 trillion in real wealth, okay? And so that's the problem. That's the major problem that we see right now. The reason I bring up this article, though, is because people want to know, okay, great. If we're in that much debt, something's bound to happen. Something's bound to crack or give. What do we do? Where do we put our hard-earned money? Where do we stash our cash? And how do we invest it safely? So I wanted to bring up this article because I don't know how many of you heard about this, but there was a group called ITG that was actually forced to settle a case with the SEC for $20 million. $20 million settlement. It was a $20 million fine levied by the SEC last week on ITG for what they called egregious wrongdoing in management of its trading dark pool. Now, what do you think dark pool refers to? That's right, it's these high-frequency trading platforms. And now, for those of you who are not aware, there are machines out there that that are owned by Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, you know, all of the big five or the major financial firms out there and some of the smaller firms out there. And they're just computers. They're based on algorithms. And what they do is they front run your order. So if you're in the market and you have a 401k or an IRA or a mutual fund or even a stock portfolio that you're trading on E-Trade, for example, and you decide that, hey, now's a good time to buy Apple stock, for example, and you place an order for Apple stock at, let's say, $500 a share. Let's say it's a $500 a share order. These high-frequency trading platforms, these computers that have algorithms that are running them, see your order that has been placed, and they front-run that order, and they place their own order ahead of you. What they do is they'll buy as much as they can for $505, which drives the price of the stock up considerably. Now, you're expecting to pay $500 for Apple stock. Well, by the time your order is placed, the price has gone up to $520 per share. And so you just got screwed out of $20 per share on your order because of a high-frequency trading platform or a computer. All right, that's the way the markets are run nowadays. And everybody who is involved in the markets and who knows about how manipulated the markets are always comes to the same conclusion. They say, okay, great, I get it. It's rigged. It's a rigged system. It's a rigged game. It's rigged for the big boys out there. How do I get out of it? How do I break free from that? What do I do? Well, we're going to take a left turn here and start from the beginning, because there are several places that you can place your wealth, and we believe strongly in physical assets. We believe in physical metals, gold and silver, as a hedge against the collapse of this rigged market. You know, what would happen to your wealth, your personal economy, if, for example, one of these high-frequency trading platforms, these algorithms, decided to do what's called a naked short sale and drive the price of a single stock or a whole exchange like the S&P 500? What if they decided to bet against the S&P 500 and drive the price of the S&P 500 down artificially? Did you know that they can do that? You know, anybody in the room realize how rigged the system is? Raise your hand, say yes, chime in, tell me something, because I'm hoping that this is not new information for most of you that are on the webinar today. This has been going on for a long time. In fact, this has been written about in several books. The latest book is called Flash Boys, which is a phenomenal book about how this rigged system was discovered and how these high-frequency trading platforms set up their computers right next to the computers that actually do the trading for you. So they plug directly into the computer system that is the S&P 500, or that is the the Dow, or that is the whatever exchange. You know, you name the exchange and that's what they do. But if you look at this, it says, my concern is not what ITG did is rampant in the trading world. I doubt that any other dark pool operator or independent execution trader is cheating their clients in such an overt, really almost caricaturistic fashion. My concern is the gray area between cheating and edge. When is it cheating and when is it just getting an extra edge on the competition? That's the key question. And so rather than dealing with that and trying to beat these high frequency trading platforms and these algorithms and these computers, why don't you just exit and get out of that whole system completely? You can do that. And you can buy physical assets with your 401k, with your IRA, with your mutual fund, with whatever plan, whatever retirement plan or whatever savings plan you're involved in. If it's a government sponsored or qualified plan, you can actually buy physical assets and get out of the market while it's rigged. Okay. Now, does that mean that stocks are bad? Does that mean that 401ks and IRAs and mutual funds are bad? No, it doesn't. It's just that we would rather own other things right now while the market is doing what it's doing. And we choose to own physical assets. We choose to own gold and silver. We choose to own productive assets, assets that are producing income or are actually earning a dividend, okay? So let's switch gears here real quickly and talk about the underlying premise for all long-term savings, okay? Now, what is the reason that we're all saving? Why do we save our money? In fact, why don't we just spend it all today? Why are we giving up our current enjoyment of our income today? What's the purpose? What's the reason? Well, the obvious answer is so that we have income streams in retirement, right? So that we have something for the future. We have an income in the future that will allow us to enjoy our lives, right? Well, if that's the truth, then it only makes sense to understand how retirement income streams work and how that market volatility affects your retirement savings, okay? In other words, how retirement income streams work economically defines how you're going to allocate your savings today. Where do you put your money, okay? The sooner you get on an efficient path, the greater the impact you have on the results. So the problems that we see today are, how much do I save and where do I put it? How much do I save and where do I put it? Those are the two key questions. And so what is the objective of savings? Is it really just to get to the top of the mountain, like in this picture here? You know, this while you're climbing the mountain, this is what we call your accumulation phase. This is where you're saving your money. Well, is the objective just to get to the top of the mountain and put a flag in the top and take a selfie? Is that the goal? Or is it really to get back down the other side safely? You know, when you think about it, going up the mountain is the accumulation phase or the savings phase. And when you're going down the mountain, down the other side of the mountain, that's the distribution phase or the income phase. All right? Which is more important, the savings phase or the distribution phase? Well, it really depends, right? In my mind, the distribution phase is much more important because we all need to live. And with inflation doing what it's doing, and with taxes doing what we believe they will do, you have to pay attention to how much income will I get at retirement. And so there are two different rates that we pay attention to. We pay attention to the accumulation rate, which is the rate of return that you're getting on your savings or your retirement account. And then we also look at the distribution rate. The distribution rate is the amount that you're pulling out of your retirement savings account every year to live on, or how much you're distributing during retirement. Make sense? So understanding how retirement income streams work The distribution phase defines how you're going to accumulate your money in pre-retirement. You have to begin with the end in mind, okay? So here's the question. If you were going to climb a mountain, would you get a guide? Of course you would. You would get a Sherpa or you would get a guide to help you up the mountain. But what if that guide turned to you and they said that they were pretty sure that they could get you up to the top of the mountain, but they weren't really sure if they could get you back down? How quickly would you switch advisors or guides? Okay, that's the key question. So the next time you talk to your financial advisor, your quote unquote financial guy or financial girl, whoever you use, ask them that question. Ask them what your income plan is at retirement. Say, hey, I understand that you're working on my portfolio and you're diversifying and you're trying to protect against the volatility of the market and the risk and all that stuff. I get it. But what is my income plan at retirement? And see what kind of response you get, okay? So we're going to take a look at an example of the real key issue or the real key problem, okay? And what you're looking at right now is a chart of the S&P 500 during 1970 to 1999. Why did we choose that time frame? Well, it just happened to be the best 30 years of the S&P 500. And so during that 30 years, during that 30-year time frame from 1970 to 1999, the S&P 500 averaged almost 15%. It averaged 14.84%, okay? Most financial planners work on averages, all right? They work on constant returns. What we work on are fluctuating returns, real life, real world scenarios. And so if you look at this chart, what we're looking at here is, you know, we're saying, what would it look like if you were to save $1 million nest egg and you were able to average 15% return on your nest egg year after year after year? Well, at the beginning of retirement, if you had $1 million nest egg and you were averaging almost a 15% rate of return on your money, you could safely withdraw your money at the rate of 10% a year or $100,000 a year and never really run out of money. Does everybody see that? Does that make sense? In fact, at the end of the 30-year time horizon, you can see that you've got $15 million instead of just $1 million because of the law of compound interest, right? And you still withdraw $100,000 a year to live on every year for 30 years, right? Well, that's not what actually happens. These are the actual rates of return during those years, during 1970 to 1999 of the S&P 500, when it averaged 14.84%. And so you'll look at the history of the S&P 500 and look at in 1973, for example, you can see it went down almost 15%. The very next year, it went down 26.5%. That's a huge loss in just 2 short years. Then it went up 37, then it went up 23, then it went down another 7. And so these fluctuating rates of return affect your balance on your savings account, on your 401k, your IRA, or your mutual fund. The risk, what we call this is the sequence of events risk. The sequence of events risk, because the sequence of when these numbers went down and when they went up, and the fact that you're pulling money out of the account simultaneously, that has a huge impact on your overall income streams at retirement. How much of an impact? Well, let's take a look at this. Again, we're looking from 1970 to 1999. These are the actual fluctuating rates of return in the S&P 500 during the best 30 years. And so again, if you had $1 million nest egg and you were withdrawing that at about 10% a year or $100,000 a year, look at what happens in reality, in real world. You run out of money in year 14. So imagine this. You're 65 years old, you decide to retire, you're all excited, you've got $1 million nest egg in 1970, which is, equivalent to a lot more money than it is today, right? Because of inflation. But because of market volatility, look at year one. You're fine in year one. You get a 3.99% return on your money. You withdraw 100 grand. It doesn't really affect your total account value, right? And then the market goes up for the next 2 consecutive years, goes up pretty significantly. So now you're up over $1 million and you're pulling out 100 grand a year. How are you feeling so far? Pretty good, right? Then you pull out another $100,000 the next year, but whoops, the market dropped 14%. That's a huge hit. And so now your balance is down to $782,000. Significant. Very next year, it drops 26.5%, and you pull out another 100 grand. Now you're down to $500,000. So in 2 short years, you went from over $1 million nest egg to $500,000 nest egg. Your wealth got cut in half in 2 years. That's what we call the sequence of events risk in the market. Okay, and so how do we fix that problem? Well, the traditional way that most financial planners fix this problem is they say, okay, instead of withdrawing your money at 10%, we'll just withdraw it at a lower rate. We'll withdraw it at 4%, for example. Okay, so now today, in today's world, in today's economy, the new rule of thumb for withdrawal rates at retirement is 4%. They call it the 4% rule. It's actually, what we're talking about is all these financial planners do is they run Monte Carlo simulations, and they look at the last 100 years or so, and they get the historic probabilities of running out of money in the years of retirement based on withdrawal rates that you choose off the beginning value of your 401k, IRA, or mutual fund, okay? And they run them for 20 or 30 years. 35 years is the kind of the longest time horizon here, all right? So what you're looking at here is a chart of withdrawal rates, various withdrawal rates from 3% to 8% on that $1 million nest egg. And you can see that if you were to withdraw that money, that $1 million nest egg at the tune of 8% a year, how much income would that give you every year? What would that give you? That would give you about 80 grand a year, pre-tax, right? Don't forget about taxes. What are taxes going to look like in the future? What is inflation going to look like in the future? How much is that $80,000 a year gonna buy you in the future? Okay, things you got to think about. Well, if you look at this in year 15, there's a 60% probability that you won't run out of money if you're withdrawing your money at 8% a year. You only have a 60% probability of not running out of money in 15 years. That to me is scary, because what I'm seeing is the flip side of that same coin is that you have a 40% chance that you will run out of money in 15 years if you're withdrawing your money at 8%. So if you start withdrawing it at lower rates in retirement, if you use the 4% rule, for example, on $1 million nest egg, how much is 4% of $1 million? That's only 40 grand a year. Let me ask you this question. How will you survive on $40,000 a year when we know that inflation is going to spike and we know that tax rates are going to go up? So what we've done is we've contacted a number of different economists, and there's a gentleman by the name of Dr. Wade Thau who ran some simulations using this software and using these withdrawal rates and seeing what is the real withdrawal rate that people need to withdraw their money at in order to have the best chance of not running out of money at retirement. Remember, we're living longer, healthier lives. I mean, my parents are my dad's in his 70s now, and he's healthy as a horse. He'll probably live to be 100. So he's got a good 30 years left in retirement. And so Dr. Wade Thau ran a bunch of simulations, and what he discovered was that a more realistic withdrawal rate is below 3%. It's actually 2.8% is a more realistic withdrawal rate at retirement in order to not run out of money. And what the way we say it is, you don't want to run out of money before you run out of breath, right? So 2.8% of $1 million is what? That's right, it's $28,000 a year. So think about this. With inflation doing what it's doing and taxes doing what they're going to be doing in the future, how will you survive on $28,000 a year? How do we fix this problem? Well, lucky for you, we have a solution. And so what I wanted to show you was a case study. This is, you know, a real client, Roger and Beverly. We've actually changed their names to protect them because, you know, we wanted to protect their confidentiality. But we've got Roger and Beverly here as an example. Roger's 59, Beverly is 64. Roger wants to work until he's about 67, so he's got about 8 more years left in him. He's an executive at a Fortune 500 company and makes a pretty good income. He makes about $200,000 a year, okay? And sometimes they bonus him, and sometimes you know, that income goes up to 250 in certain years, depending on how the company's doing. Right now, though, his salary is $200,000 a year, so he's pretty happy with that income, okay? He wants to maintain that income at retirement. And so we're assuming that in retirement that he's going to be in the 35% tax bracket, because at $200,000 a year, you know, he's generally going to be in the upper bracket as far as income tax is concerned. He wanted to show a lower rate of return on his savings, on his assets. Now, he's been able to save quite a bit of money in his 401k. He's got $430,000 saved in his 401k, and he wanted to see what would it look like if I only got an average rate of return of 4%. Now that's net of all fees, right? That means that if he's working with a guy at Fidelity or Charles Schwab or at JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs or any other money manager, they're going to take anywhere from 2 to 4% in fees every year, year after year. So if he's earning 6% net of that fee, he's really earning 4%. Does that make sense? And so what we have is a 4% rate of return on his 401k. And by the time in the next 8 years, if it grows at 4%, it will have grown to $588,000. Okay, everybody follow me so far? Now, what we've done is we've said, you and I know that the real withdrawal rate, the safest withdrawal rate is 2.8%, but his financial planner insists that 4% is the safe withdrawal rate. So we're going to hit that right in the middle, and we're going to say, what would it look like if we withdrew that money at 3.5% instead of 4% or instead of 2.8%? Just hit it right in the middle, 3.5% withdrawal rate. Is everybody with me so far? Just say yes in the chat box if you're with me so far, okay? All right. Well, that will net him about, or get him about $20,000 a year in income from that pool of money, that $588,000 401k. All right. Now that's pre-tax. That's before taxes. Okay. So he also is trading in an E-Trade account, and he's got a pretty big stock portfolio that's worth almost $1 million right now. It's worth about $950,000. And again, he's unsure as to how it's actually performing. He has no idea if it's going up or down or just moving sideways. He really doesn't know. So we're going to assume a 4% growth rate on that money for the next 8 years, just because, all right? And if it does grow at 4% in 8 years, it'll be worth $1.3 million. And if he was to withdraw that money at 3.5% a year, that'll give him an additional $45,000. So the net of everything is that with his existing money, the money that he has right now in his 401k and his E-Trade account, if he was to just let it ride and it grew at 4% and he started withdrawing it at age 67, okay, when he wants to retire, then it will get him about $66,000 a year in income. He's accustomed to making over $200,000 a year. So picture this. Imagine this. Roger goes home to Beverly and he says, "Hey, Bev, good news. I get to retire next week." And she gets all excited. She's super excited. Finally, they're going to get to retire and travel and go do some fun things together. Okay. The bad news is that they're going to have to take an extreme pay cut in doing that. All right. So what is the solution that Roger comes up with? Well, he's going to max fund his 401k to the tune of $24,000 a year. His employer is going to contribute as well. He's going to match that to the tune of $6,000 a year. Okay. He's also going to save about $92,000 a year for the next 8 years just to beef up that stock portfolio a little bit more. Now, is that $92,000 guaranteed to go up? No, it's not. It's very volatile out there, and we don't know if he's going to lose that money or if it's going to actually earn any interest. All right, but we're going to play along with them. These are his numbers. Remember, these are Roger's numbers, not mine. He's saving $24,000 a year. The company's matching it with $6,000 a year. He's assuming a 4% net of all fees growth rate on that money. And if that happens, it'll grow to $875,000 a year, or $875,000 gross. And if he withdraws it at 3.5%, he'll be able to withdraw a little bit more money than before. Okay. Same with his stock portfolio. If he was to add this $92,000 to his stock portfolio and it grows at 4%, it'll be worth over $2 million at retirement. Well, if he withdraws it at 3.5%, that'll give him $76,000 a year. So his total income now is $107,000 a year. How much of that is guaranteed? That's right, none of it. You can go ahead, answer in the chat room. You know, go ahead and type your answers in the chat room. Please play along. Feel free to play along. But think about this again. You go home to your wife or your significant other and you say, "Hey, good news is I get to retire next week. Bad news is we're taking a 50% haircut on our income." How do you think you're feeling now? And this is, remember, Roger's done everything right from day one. He's max funded his 401k. He's getting his full employer matching with it. He's also saving as much as he possibly can in another savings account that is hopefully growing at 4%. You know, whether it's a CD or a stock portfolio, we don't know. You know, but 4% growth rate. When you retire with almost $3 million in nest egg, that makes you feel pretty good about what you've done. You know, think about that psychologically for just a second. If I was to go home to my wife and say, "Hey, honey, guess what? We've got $3 million in savings," I'd feel pretty good about that. But with the amount of time that I have left in my life, how much will that allot me in income every year safely to withdraw so that I don't run out of money? Not a lot. Not a lot. And with inflation and taxes doing what they're doing, who knows what could happen. So what I proposed to Roger was, I said, what if we just diverted some of this $92,000 that you're putting in your E-Trade account every year, and we put about $61,000 a year into a life insurance policy. Now, why do we choose life insurance as a vehicle for saving? Well, for those of you who don't know, life insurance is not considered the same as the banks or Wall Street. It's completely segregated and insulated from our banking system and from Wall Street. It is a social contract between you and the life insurance company. It has one purpose, and that purpose is to recover lost income for your family or your loved ones, the people who have loved you your whole life, so that you won't disinherit them when you die. You know, if you were to die, if Roger was to die prematurely, all of this money would be fully taxable as, you know, as soon as it was liquidated, right? It'd be taxed as ordinary income. It would be transferred to his wife. She would take over this money, but it would still be taxed as ordinary income, right? Well, life insurance has different properties. It's lawsuit proof, judgment proof, and creditor proof. Nobody can touch the money inside these contracts. And so you can see that if he was just to divert just $61,000 a year for the next 8 years into a life insurance contract, he would have cash value immediately in the contract at the end of the year because he's earning dividends on that money in the contract. He would have immediate death benefit protection just in case something happened to him. And by the time he reached age 67, that savings, that $61,000 a year, will have grown to $634,000 in cash that he'll be able to dip into if he wants to. That's in addition to his E-Trade account that's at $1.5 million and his 401k that's at $875,000. All right. He will have a death benefit of over $2 million, so that if he does get hit by the Budweiser truck, all of the money that is in his retirement accounts can be replaced by this death benefit. So the family can literally use this money to pay the death tax at that time, knowing that all of that money will be replenished with death benefit. You follow me? And so what we did was we just said, we ran these numbers and we said, what if we did this? What options would we have at retirement to get more income? Okay. Now, the first option we have is what's called the covered asset option. And all that means is that because he has this $2 million in death benefit, that allows him to spend down all of his savings, his 401k and his stock portfolio, at a much faster rate of 4%. Okay. Now, we call that annuitizing your assets. What he could literally do is dump all of his 401k and all of his non-qualified money into an annuity. And those annuity rates right now are anywhere from, I don't know if you can see this, but it says they're anywhere from 7 to 13% on the withdrawal rate, the pay rate. So the check that you get in the mail every year will be between 7% and 13% of the amount of money that you dump into the annuity, okay? Because he has this death benefit here, he could spend that money, that savings down at 7% or even at a higher rate of return. He could spend it down at 10% if he wanted to, all right? If he did spend it down at 10%, it would give him a lot more money. Look how much income it would give him at retirement. All right. Let's drop that number back down to 7 because we're going to be conservative here. We're going to say that he's going to just spend his 401k and his stock portfolio down at the rate of 7% a year in retirement. Okay. Look at how much income that gives him. Now, he is going to have a little bit left over in the stock portfolio that is not going to be covered by death benefit. So we kept that out. What we did was we took $2,025,972 out of his savings and annuitized it so that he could spend it down at a higher rate of return, or a higher spend down rate, sorry. But there is some remaining, a little bit remaining, that he's going to have to spend down at a lower rate so he doesn't run out of money before he runs out of breath. But even having said that, look at this. So now imagine this. Roger goes home to Beverly and says, hey, Beverly, good news. I'm retiring next week. And I've got even better news. We're getting a pay increase. So instead of $200,000 a year, he's now able to get $205,000 a year. All right. And how much of that is guaranteed? Well, the total amount that's in the annuity is guaranteed income for life. The part that's not in the annuity is not guaranteed, of course. That can fluctuate with the market. But any money that you dump into an annuity product is guaranteed income for life. So it's quite a bit of money, you know. $200,000 of that money is guaranteed income for life, guaranteed lifetime income. So imagine this, going home and saying, good news, I get to retire next week. Better news, I'm not going to lose a dime in income, and it's 100% guaranteed for the rest of my life. Pretty good news, huh? I'd take that any day, all right? The other option that he has, though, is he does have some cash value that's been built up in that life insurance policy. You know, he's got a $2 million death benefit, $634,000 in retirement or in cash value that's built up in the account. And so that allows him to, again, spend down his 401k and his stock portfolio at a much higher rate, because he knows that he's got $634,000 that he can dip into if he sees some volatility. So again, if we're looking at these withdrawal rates and he starts spending that money down at a much higher rate, much higher spend down rate, and we see some volatility in the market where there are fluctuating rates of return, he doesn't have to dip into his nest egg. He doesn't have to dip into his 401k or IRA money at that point in time. What he can do is he can dip into the cash in his life insurance account when the market is going down. And then he can wait for the market to recover, and then he can begin to dip into that money again. Does that make sense? Now, if he was to do that and spend this money down at a higher spend down rate, at an 8% spend down rate, he would be close to getting the income that he's accustomed to getting right now today. He would have almost $200,000 in income at retirement. He'd be able to spend it down, and he would have a little bit of volatility buffer here. Now, we try and shoot for about 5 years of volatility buffer, and in this scenario, this case scenario, we've got 4.9 years. So I'm comfortable with that. That means that he has 5 years, roughly, of volatility in the market where he doesn't have to touch this money. He can dip into his cash in his life insurance account that he's accumulated over the next 8 years, and he can dip into it tax-free, because he can borrow against this money instead of spending the actual cash. He can borrow every year $200,000 and never not have to use or not have to touch this money and deplete that asset. Make sense? And when you borrow against the account, that income is not considered ordinary income. It's a loan, so it's tax-free. So he could essentially borrow out $200,000 a year tax-free for approximately 5 years. Make sense? And so when we hit summary, view summary and save, we get to see the net effect of his decisions, the options that he has. His financial advisor has advised him to max out his 401k and IRA and just buy term, right? Buy term and invest the difference. That's what our buddy Dave Ramsey always tells us to do, right? Well, if he was to buy term and invest the difference, he would only have about $107,000 a year in income during retirement, okay? And how much of that money is guaranteed? None of it, because it's in a market that's volatile and risky, right? But by choosing to divert some of that money into life insurance products or some uncorrelated asset class, he is guaranteed much more income at retirement. And then if he wants to just keep that life insurance policy in place and use some of that money, he can dip into the cash value of the life insurance policy, and he's got about 5 years of volatility buffer where he doesn't have to spend down his 401k or IRA money. He can use the life insurance cash for about 5 years before he has to go back and dip into the other pool of money that he saved. Makes sense? So the bottom line is, the big key question here is, would you rather be salmon or blue or green in retirement? And with that in mind, we're going to close. So thanks for joining us, and we will talk to you next week.